Okay, uphill. As in battle, but I'm sure it won't be in your case. Still some struggles with the notes in the left hand. I think one note you learned wrong though, I think, is that one. That goes down to an A flat. It's not just a good. You play this one good. Just that particular one. Yeah. So I think what you have to get to grips with here is how are you going to get this. It sounds like a strange thing to say, but how are you going to get this to sound good? This opening gambit for a piece like this that has a specific technical challenge. So now I know why you were sitting doing that warm-up.
Yes.
Is how are you going to pull off this right hand thing without it sounding sort of uneven and you want it to sound as sort of, I don't know how to explain it, but you want it like this, don't you? You want it to be sort of focused and round and finding its own way and very smooth, I imagine. When I look at the music, I imagine some very legato instruments. Just also because it's so chromatic, kind of we want it, you know, blended. Or I would imagine a string instrument with quite a lot of bow pressure and, you know, something to make it kind of like this, like there's sort of, there's something viscose about it, and sticky, and smooth, and all this kind of thing, and finding its own sort of slightly awkward way, but relentless. So, this is one of those pieces where you could do well to look at it as two separate things occurring, the right hand and the left hand, are two tasks that join up. And always when that happens, one should ask oneself, how would this sound if indeed two players were doing it? How good would that sound? And how could I get it to sound like that? Because if you and I were to do this as a duet, you know, I would take, one of us would take the top line, and off you'd go, and you'd have a certain set of sticks. I notice you're using different sticks.
Yes.
That's probably a good thought process. Take it forward that way. But one player would be doing a certain thing here, another one here. Now, of course, your task is, over and above that, is to get both those things working. Have you done it hand separately?
A little bit.
A little bit.
To get crazy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think there's quite a lot of information in the piece. What I noticed about the composition itself is that it's actually quite a wide dynamic range, which we missed in your performance. That might be the sticks a little bit, actually, because you're quite bogged down with your sticks. They're fairly soft. It's, again, choosing mallets is an essential part of what you do. I think something about these sticks, they're a little, I mean, not so much that they're soft, but they're quite heavy.
Yes.
They seem to be kind of missing quite a lot of bass notes. And I feel that that's a bit rough justice on you, because I think you've got them, but somehow you're just not quite making them. So you might need to loosen up a bit, and that, you know, have a better warm-up or something. Could be the sticks also that little bit too heavy. Some of your dynamics are quite missing. I mean, this double forte is perhaps going to be tough anyway, but you should maybe think about it. And maybe have it as being a piece where there can be more sort of into the audience, if you like, and then away from them. So I think about that quite a lot with the pieces I'm doing. How close do you want to feel to the audience with your music? Do you want to keep it here, you know, so a little bit like this, or do you want to open up to them, or do you want to absolutely give it to them in your face? So that's all interesting. An actor would do it with certain gestures and imply what they need to imply in their own way. But in our way, we can do it with dynamics, and also certain things to do with tempo. Like you noticed maybe, hard to recollect perhaps, but in this piece, when it moves from this when it opens up into the whites, you know, the modality becomes just the white keys. And we get rid of the semitonal tension. Now on the page, that's all it says, is basically there's more there, and when I started experimenting with it, I realised I just want to put the breaks on there and let people know that we've cleaned that out. You're going to have to listen to this a little bit slower now, everyone. That's what you have to do. I'm in control. And we're just going to take a step back, and then we're going to build it again. So that's hopefully the effect when I play something like this. It builds up again. So these tempo nuances can be deployed sparingly, I would say. they do interrupt the flow, and that's what I wanted to do there. But maybe you could think a little bit more about how you want to take the audience with you in this piece. Because too much of it sounds samey. And I think in this piece that's maybe not going to work because the material is quite simple, and you just might need to have a little more loopiness in the piece. I think the piece could be a little more eccentric, in fact. It's sounding a little notey right now. I'm aware of the notes. I don't want to be aware of the notes. I want to be out of that. You try it again. It's funny. It's a funny little piece to try and pull off. But just give it another shot from the beginning. Play. Sort of open it up to some ideas, whatever comes to mind. Could we hear the right hand alone? Is that going to be difficult without the music, perhaps?
Not certain.
Yeah? Okay. Now this is. I'm slightly hesitant to do this, but because you're showing us great musicality with the way your body's moving. But not all of that is actually coming out of your horn, if you like. So you have a graceful approach to the instrument, but we don't hear it. So can you try and, I mean, I don't want to hem you in, but I do want to hem you in temporarily.
Yes.
Before we hem you out again. But if you just focus everything into the hand and try and get your movement. The movement that you want over to us, but agreeing with the notes. Okay. Now, just temporarily, can you be a little less movement in the head? Yeah. This instrument, the Western 12 pitches in the octave, 5 of them are not going to sound very good. Is that right with you? Yeah. Now that's another one of the things, that instrument would just never be built. We'd strap it there and say, you know what, we're going to build one where all the notes sound quite good. So when you play on the edge of the bar, every time you do, it's less good, the sound. Unless you're got specific sticks on the go. certainly in this case, every time we pin the edge of the bar, we hear it. Different marimbas are acting in different ways, and the type of sticks you're using, because they're quite heavy, we're just hearing a lot of pull on the marimba chord, and the tone is in sharp contrast to the naturals. So you have to judge every case on its merit. If you could play on the edge of the bar and get it to sound absolutely great and no discernible difference between the two different keyboards, brilliant. Pass that every time. If someone can actually do that, that's great. But I always say the same thing, unless you're playing block chords, you really can't tell the difference. When you're playing block chords, because there was 3-4 notes, and let's say minimum on the chords, it doesn't really matter, because you can kind of get away with it. But I remember my early studies, I was very influenced by this Danish percussion duo, the Sapri duo. Now they're sort of a bit off the scene now, but when I first heard them, I was staggered by their approach to the bell instruments. They played very loudly, and the sound was huge. It was giant, it filled the room, and your ears were kind of, because they had all these wonderful sort of dimensions of sound coming out of the instrument. And one of the things they told me was, early on, they just decided, you know what, we're just never going to play next to the bar. We're just not doing that. Imagine a violin where all the accidentals were slightly off. And that really influenced me. And I know I step on a lot of toes with this, because I think that's more or less how people are told to learn the marimba. And the thing is, my teacher never told me that. She was of an older generation, and she didn't really know about marimba. So it came as a surprise to me that people play on the edge of the bar. I never learned to do it. So I couldn't play a scale very quickly using going back between here. I couldn't do that. I found that very difficult. Also, the thing you're aiming for is much smaller. I mean, the sweet spot on the edge of the bar is really the edge of the bar.
Yes.
It's nowhere else. There is useless. Even there, not really good. It's there. Whereas here, you've got a big kind of margin of acceptability. So I don't know in this piece whether, because of the angles,
Yes.
you're going to be able to do much about that or not. But it is consideration. And also maybe your mallet choice. If you are having to play on the edge of the bar, you might want to think about some mallets that are a bit more helpful.
So would those be lighter?
I think lighter, particularly in the head.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it's just getting a bit, it's this kind of thing. Different marimbas work in different ways. Marimba 1 is absolutely my instrument of choice. Tends to work a little bit better than some others than that. You get into real trouble with some other models. But have a think about it. The trouble is, I mean, it seems to be how everyone plays.
Yeah.
And people in my ensemble, other percussionists that I choose to bring into my group, that's how a lot of them play too. But sometimes, we'll be doing a Steve Reich piece, and I'll just go over to someone and say, you know what, can you get off the edge of the bar, because it sounds like this. But it's because of that note being the edge of the bar. And when they get over that, lo and behold, it starts to sound like it's in a circle, after all. That's the right hand. The left hand, I think, you agree you're missing quite all the notes.
Yes.
Can I ask you about that? Do you hazard a guess at that?
I think it's not as well of my body position has been playing well enough. So trying to reach, it's kind of like throwing over to get that bottom, sometimes miss.
Yeah. That's interesting. Can you play left hand alone? I'm not saying I disagree with you, it's just left hand alone. In an ideal body position, to start with. Yeah. I would like to go back a little bit to some of the principles of the technique, which is a bit more of the poppiness of the wrist. Stevens' concept of wrist pop. Now, I actually studied with Stevens, although I played Burton committedly. I did about a year of playing with Stevens, and I studied with him, and I learned a lot from him. fantastic, strong concepts. A lot of them very hard to refute. I mean, it's hard to build techniques in different players, and I always think everyone's hands are different and can be different and should look different and that kind of thing. But he has some good principles. And the one that stuck with me the most is this slightly poppiness, as he calls it, the wrist pop, boink. And for me, the no marimba note, when you're slowing down activity, is done until you prepare for it, play for it, and then recover. So it's doink. So you ready for the note, you launch it, you play it, you come back, and you wait for the next one. So this one should look a bit more boing, bing, boing, bing, jumping from one to the other, in an effort to make it more smooth and more accurate. Yeah, could you make the gesture, I would demonstrate it, I hesitate away from that, I'd like to try and discuss it. You make it a little more in smooth, rhythmic gestures. The pop, yes, but you're kind of doing doink, doink. It's not particularly in tandem with the movement of the music. And to keep it slow. See how much time you have. Yeah, you could probably come away from the keyboard a little further. Keep it slow. Good. Now we've got some bounce. And I think that will help you, because I'll make the observation that when you're doing octaves and things like that, especially playing octaves, you're seldom going to overcook them. And how many times I've gone from octave and hit a ninth? Never. Never. That's never happened to me. I mean, basically. How many times have I gone from octave and hit a seventh? Probably every day of my life for the past 30 years. So, try and keep it, think wide when you're in wide intervals. Just keep the mindset wide. You're not going to overcook this, especially in the left hand. Okay. Let's put them together again. It's a lot of babbling, but just try and find your flow. I mean, you're not going to be able to correct the edge of the bar thing. Don't worry about that right now. Yeah, just have another play. Have a noodle. So when things get into hot water there and you've got the bigger stretches, what I noticed is that your movement of the left hand became less effective. Now, I don't know what's cause and effect there precisely, but that's when you need it to be most functional, is when it's tough. When it's tough going. So an observation I have for you there is just that. Work on that, practice it so that you're keeping. Approach it this way round. Try and get the motion right, and that will help with the flow. Other than sort of trying to work on your flow, but you haven't actually addressed why the flow has been interrupted. So you should be looking for the whys and wherefores of issues in the projection of the music. You know, why am I not water here? Something to do with the body angle, the extra stretching, and as a result of that, my flow has gone to the left hand. Let's try and put some flow back into the left hand. I'm trying to approach it that way. Very good job on memorizing. I do appreciate that. Is that something that you're used to doing?
Memorizing. It is used to what I'm doing. When I first started, I tried reading the music as I played it.
Yeah.
And then just as I kept going, it eventually just started getting memorized.
Are you a pianist?
No.
What I encourage, just to talk a little bit about memorizing, is even if, no matter how ham-fisted you are at the piano, the thing is, you just have to take that leap. I'm only asking for 10 minutes of your life. Just go and play at the piano. Now, I haven't actually, someone somewhere will be able to tell me about this, but I haven't met them yet. But I don't know, because I don't know why it is. It could just be my experience, but when I've talked to other people about it, they said exactly the same thing. That taking these pieces to the piano, for some reason, gives them a very much stronger solidity for a feel for the notes. Now, my guess is it's something to do with the fact that you actually are physically playing the notes. Here, we're in mid-air. I mean, yes. I'll play a concert tomorrow, and then so will you. You might come on stage, and you won't touch a single instrument. I mean, who else does that? Yeah? We don't touch instruments. So, I play a big marimba piece tomorrow night, big marimba concerto, Michael Torquay, and we'll never touch instruments. And at one remove, I'm with my mallets. And to imbibe the notes properly, especially when you're memorizing things, the piano will just give you the same but from a different perspective. So I always think of it as a geometric shape. These are all the notes you have to learn. And what you want to do is you want to walk around that shape and you want to look at it from as many different angles as you can. So here I am playing at the marimba, and here I am looking at it over here. I'm playing at the piano now. And here I am, I'm looking at it on the airplane, and I'm looking at just 4 or 5 notes at a time. I'm shutting my eyes, and I'm saying to myself, yes, F, G, B, C sharp, E, like that. And that's another way of looking at it. Because as percussionists, people love to see what you're doing. And, you know, I did my new solo recital program at Wigmore Hall, London, and the main comment was that however good this, or not, but however good the second half may have been, the first half wiped the floor with it because it was memorized. And everyone could just see what you're doing. And the second half I had was playing the violin, and that's months away from being memorized. So I had the score up, and yeah, it's not so good for the audience. So I think we get in there early with at least the vision of memorizing as much as at all possible in what you play. And then I noticed your standard's very high. At least try and avoid that. I mean, you're a tall chap, so that's a bit difficult. But even so, try and get the stand low and flat. Sure. So that people really, and also the sound. I mean, to lesser degrees, the music stand's not really going to get away with the sound, but you'd be surprised. People listen with their eyes, yeah, and try and get that going. But I'm just interested in your approach to memorizing things. So you were sort of drip feeding it to yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. that's also acceptable, but I think it's good to try and look at these things from different perspectives. I find people talk to me about memory and performance pressures, anxieties, and again, that's another thing that I like to address head on, is that performance anxieties as such are absolutely natural, and it's just very important to invert that energy. So I had a very difficult time in my early 20s with feeling nervous. I just generally felt nervous on stage. And I can play extremely well even. I've got this one recording that I listen to, actually, it's the only recording of mine that I listen to a lot, because it's one I'm very proud of, but I know that I was on stage and absolutely dreading every single second of what was going on. But when you hear it, it sounds really exactly how I wanted it to sound. And that recording for me was very important because it helped me realize that you can come at these things from all different angles. And that thing came off, not because my head was struggling, but because I had worked at it, I had ingrained it, I had this thing down. I could play it forwards, backwards, I really knew these notes. And somehow I just was able to get over that problem, gain some confidence, and use that experience to get over those kinds of negative feelings. And it's important to take these moments, things to do with very negative words like anxiety, and one word I actually detest is stress. Someone says, really very stressed today. I can't stand it. No, it's not helpful. Yeah. So it's not stress. I might be concentrated, I might be focused. So try and think of it that way too. It's very natural. All your body's doing is when you go to give a concert is you're getting an adrenaline kick, which is something originally designed by all this to help you. Now, I always play my best in concerts. Now, I might miss a few. I might have concerts that I'm not so happy with, and ones I'd rather forget. But as I go over the years, I don't remember my practice sessions. I remember certain concerts where I had extra awareness and confidence, and that's from adrenaline. So it's just, you have to turn these things around and use them to your advantage. And in terms of memorizing things, people feel that they might slip up or lose their place, and we all have done that. That's why it's important to look at these things from all these different perspectives. Another thing I've started to do is to break phrases up into the component parts, to really make sure that I understand each individual phrase, each individual portion of a phrase. So I find as mallet players, we tend to learn our phrases. I think if we don't Porgy and Bess, we come to the keyboard and we do, and we play the whole thing. Yeah? Yes. We don't break it down, but that's actually a very good way of doing it. Break it down, play each little bit. Do I really know this bit? Can I play this bit and this bit? Can I play this bit and this bit? Can I play this bit, this bit, this bit? Can I go back to playing just this bit? Can I play that bit? All different combinations. In a bar of 4 beats, there's 16 notes. Can I play notes 1 to 4, notes 1 to 8, notes 5 to 8? Can I play notes 5 through 12? All different things. And that's how you get on top of your notes. Just expanding generally here, just make some points. How would I want to see this piece continue for you? I think, just thinking about the mallet choice, there's something quizzical about music, and you might want to think about maybe some rubber mallets or something. Yeah, maybe just to try and get something a bit more spooky in the sound. A lot of people don't use rubber mallets on marimba, but it's well, we have some. I mean, yeah, get some. I have some that might be good for the bass. Let me get them for you here. Now, just again, it's very unfair to get you to do this off the bat. But can you just try from the beginning with this setup? This could sound interesting. It's a very heterogeneously populated piece. Every movement is really quite different from any other ones that are surrounding it. But his way into composing each movement would be a discussion of the colour of the instrument in that movement via mallets. So he was just trying out all these different sticks, all these different combinations. So the first movement has a wooden mallet on top and some fairly soft ones with it. Those you know about, these are used for a specific movement. That's lower in the instrument. We have regular yarn ones for fairly straight ahead. We have hard rubber and a plastic mallet. We have incredibly soft mallets in the low register. So every movement has a sort of maximizes one coloristic possibility. And I think that's really all we can do in marimba, because it is annoying. And what I don't like about the instrument is that once you have your mallets in your hand, that's your sound. And you can't, there's not much you can change. You can't change your airflow, or your embouchure, or your pressure, or your pedaling, or I don't know what, your bow speed, or there's nothing, you don't have anything. So it's important to get mallets that work and that you can experiment with. So it's good to see that you have choice here, and that it gets expensive, but try. If you want to get out on these instruments, it's essential to have different sounds at your disposal, and to sort of think a little bit like that, bring in these different sounds to the instrument. So yeah, I think I'd like to shake your hand and say, well done, nice work. Yeah, we'll probably call it a wrap. Because there are two fine Marimba 1 instruments here, it'd be great to get a little picture. Is that all right?
Yeah.
We'll do that, Marimba 1.
Yeah.
Always ask me to do that. Does anyone have any brief questions for me? About my work, or what I play, or...
How did you get into the area?
Well, it's a gradual thing. I mean, we're very much a different generation, and because percussion has moved so quickly,
Yes.
Things are very different. How old are you?
19.
Yeah, so for me that's 20 years ago, and it was not clear what was happening with solo percussion then. We had probably one major sort of spokesperson, Evan Glenn, but it was not clear if someone, or maybe even a number of people, could sort of follow her up on her sort of massive career that she put together in a kind of arguably sort of quite unique way. So no one could really say, oh yeah, well, you can go and be a soloist. I mean, as you could to other instrumentalists. I mean, there have been cello soloists, even though that's also quite a niche instrument in some ways, emerging over many decades. Rostropovich will come, and then along comes Perrinet, Truls Mork, whatever, Johannes Moser, Alban Gerhardt. There's always new cellists coming in, and that will continue. So it wasn't really known. So I went to London to study as an orchestral player, and then I did my solo things in my own time, and just put them together one by one, and kept a very diverse number of interests. A lot of plate spinning. I had a percussion duo. I played in contemporary music groups. I played in orchestras. I did short solo recitals. I started to play concertos once or twice. I got new pieces written for me. I started to give marching premieres. Tried to maximise the contacts that I made because I loved it so much. So I started to quite enjoy the more business side of things, staying in touch with people and trying to be a good egg. And just because I wanted to do something, especially for the repertoire, I felt, it just sort of hasn't really happened yet. And in the 90s it was starting to happen, and I always contest that 3 big concertos from that era helped establish the art form very particularly, and those 3 pieces are James McMillan, Beni Beni Manuel, Christopher Rouse Concerto, Der Gedeckte Albrecht, and the Joseph Schwantner Concerto. And I think particularly those pieces because they've been played collectively hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, and to a very wide audience. So, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people have heard those pieces live, let alone the recordings. So that all happened in the 90s, and I just gradually faded out my freelance orchestral playing as I realised that if I was really going to do this, I really had to stay hot and practice and turn up ready for things, because playing things with orchestra for the first time is very difficult. It's really tough. That's one thing I found early on. It was one thing to play my piece in the practice room, but especially in the premiere, you go in, and as much as you look at that score, you go in and play that thing for the first time with the London Philharmonic finding their way behind you. That'll give you the shivers. Yeah. So you've got to have that thing solid, because when you're out there and doing that, you want to turn the hands on and let them go and just get your ears out. So I don't know. That's been my thing, is to try and bring hopefully my sensibilities as an orchestral player to how I play as a soloist. It's all about blend, placement, balance. 90% of what I do is with orchestras, so I'm very fortunate in that regard. So that's where I'm at. I don't really know how things go. It's an interesting time of it. The orchestras are having difficulties. They still like to do new things, but it's quite tricky for them to do so. So I'm enjoying things like my new solo recital, and I have an ensemble now that's Steve Reich's music, and certainly in this 80th year, that's going to be a busy season for us. And my advice to young players coming through is that it's a very populated field now. So it depends what you want to do, but I think what's attractive and what is going to be the best thing for anyone is to have an interesting freelance career, do a bit of probably but probably kind of the age I was when I was about 24 or 26. That's probably a good place for aspiring professionals to be, if I may say, combining orchestral work with education work, workshops, certain recital projects, chair music, bit of orchestral playing. It's all out there. It's all doable. So keep practicing the same thing. So yeah, you come to the gig if you can, and let me know what you think afterwards of the pieces. They're quite diverse, so it's unlikely you'll love all of them, maybe a little bit. They're worth hearing. Most percussion is quite out of talky. Had this couple of players showed up last night, and that was their favourite piece. The quartet are very fond of the Pereira. It's an interesting piece, quite modern. sandwiching approach. But yeah, it's worth having a listen. Should we get that photo done and then we can... Great. Yep. We're in. Awesome. Thanks a lot. All right. Well, hope to see you tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you, Colin.
You're welcome.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your appointment. Well,